Go. Okay, well, welcome back to lesson 8. We got some amazing speakers today. You've read their bios. We're real privileged to welcome Chris Lynch to class, currently the Rebellion CEO. Of his many things, he was really well known in the Department of Defense for being the founding director of the Defense Digital Service. I managed to visit his office in the Pentagon. It's a little slice of Silicon Valley there with hoodies and sneakers in a land of suits, but he just did amazing work there, as you read. I love the last line in your Rebellion bio, Chris, where you say you lecture at Stanford Computer Science, which is great, but also that you encourage nerds to serve in the government. So I hope that inspires some of you if the shoe fits. But thanks for joining us, Chris, and over to you, and we'll have some questions afterwards.
Great, thanks, Joe. Chris, so good to have you here, and I'd like to start by asking you a couple of first few questions, and then we'll dig in. But the first question I wanted to have you speak on is culture, and the culture of change. I'd like to highlight to everyone here on the call. So on Chris's first day at the Pentagon, he shows up in a hoodie and sneakers, as Joe said. But then on his last day at the Pentagon, he had no less than 15 people in full Star Wars regalia in the most formal awards ceremony that the department has. I don't think either of those have happened before and probably will never happen again. So Chris, tell us about your experience in changing culture.
Yeah, there's a lot in there from that start to that finish. One of the things that I thought a lot about when I showed up, and the story actually begins with that hoodie and sneakers, actually long before the actual founding of Defense Digital Service. The chief technology officer at the White House in the Obama administration is an amazing entrepreneur, Todd Park. And Todd had mentioned to me that it would be worthwhile for me to head over to meet with the Department of Defense, who were thinking of creating their own version of United States Digital Service. And this was when Ash Carter was the Secretary of Defense. And he said, the knives are going to come out. There's going to be a lot of people who want to do this, who want to lead innovation, all these things. And a lot of people are coming through. They're going to all pitch their version. And I thought about it a lot like a startup. And I said, you know what? I'm going to think of this as a pitch. And I came in with a pitch around a SWAT team of nerds that would work on problems of impact and things that matter. And it was really funny because I really remember the first time I walked into the waiting room for the office of the Secretary of Defense. And it was like, it kind of felt like Shark Tank. There were a bunch of other people who were all going in to do their pitch and talk about their idea for what they wanted to build. And some of them had presentations and all these things printed out. And of course, it's the Department of Defense. Here we're talking about technology and innovative ideas and doing things different with technology and software. And of course, nobody was able to do an actual presentation with a computer. So everybody had printed everything off. I chose to show up that day representing what I thought was the culture of what it had to be from the very beginning. That if we tried to build the bridge by being what they were, that it wasn't going to be right. It wasn't going to be authentic, and we would never attract the best people into the most important mission that I think exists in the entire world, the mission of defense and national security. So I said, you know what? This is about not being what that is, but instead bringing something new into it. So I showed up in a hoodie, and I showed up as me, and I didn't print off a presentation or anything. I said, I'm just going to do it as I would a pitch. And I pitched this idea. Let's do this SWAT team of nerds. And I can remember it felt really, really weird standing in that office and people in suits and all this stuff. And seeing people in uniform in the military. And it was just such a different world. It was completely and totally unlike anything that I had ever seen. But it felt like the right thing to do. And, Raj just fast forwarded to the first day showing up, and and I said, okay, that's what it is, right? That's what they wanted. That's what I wanted to be in that part of the story, because I felt that it was important that we actually get people to show up into the mission. And when I say that, I think that that's probably one of the most critical things that became the basis of how I thought about what we were building. I believed that if I told people, hey, I want you to leave your job where you're paid more than what I'm going to pay you. I want you to leave your job that you're going to get free meals or some other whimsical thing. I want you to leave your job where you're living and working around a bunch of other software engineers. And I want you to come into a place that is going to be so unbelievably difficult, frustrating, sometimes demoralizing, and very, very difficult. I want you to come into that. And I want you to give me 6 months to 1 year. But I also just want you to be you. And when you leave, if you do your job here, if you do the thing that we showed up to do, and if we are successful in what we're trying to accomplish, it will change your life until the day you die. And you'll never be able to get it out of your blood. And that's the place that we built. And I think that that's the culture. I think that's the right place to be, because it allowed us to show up. And we became known as, weirdly enough, Raj knows this, we became known as kind of the people in hoodies, right? And you would have the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff doing a presentation for newly minted generals, and they would show a slide with a picture of me with orange tennis shoes on. And it just, as I kind of described it, it became our uniform. And it also made it really easy to be like, oh, that's Chris Lynch. He's a nerd, right? Like that's the person that I want to talk to. Like that person, I want to talk to that individual. And so that's sort of how I thought about it. And that was the culture that we decided to build, and just keep that focused on results, and not getting caught up in sizzle, but getting caught up in actual real things, getting caught up in building real tangible stuff. And I think that we were successful. And yeah, on that last day, we had a full R2 unit that was controlled by a remote operator. It was crazy. It was awesome. If I had thought about it, I probably would have shown a picture, but it was pretty spectacular.
And what Chris doesn't tell you is that when those R2-D2s were moving around, he was being awarded the highest civilian honor in the Pentagon, which is a very, very formal and somber event.
And I actually got the medal on top of that medal. Princess Leia did the award ceremony from the end of A New Hope, and I got the same medal from that as well. So all around, it was a pretty memorable event in the Secretary's conference room.
So Chris, now you've transitioned outside of the department, and now you are attempting as a private company to help the department with product and capability that is of a modern nature, and AI is key of it. How's your experience been on the other side now?
Couple different things. I believe when I say that it changes you, that is true. It gets into your blood, and I don't. The best way that I can describe this weird circuitous journey in my life of ending up in this space that was unexpected, and I had no background in government, I had no background in military, and yet when I left Defense Digital Service, I was standing, I felt like at the shore of this vast undulating sea of all the things that I might do next. And how I would describe my life is that it has been this circuitous journey to understand the word mission. And it's that thing that changes you, and you don't really know, I don't really know how to describe it besides that the tangible things that you can do in this space are hard to leave. And as we started to think about what to do next, Rebellion, which is the company that we started in July of last year, was built around the idea of let's do something spectacular. Let's continue that mission, but at a scale that would be impossible inside, and would also be able to bring in incredible new people who wanted to work on something meaningful and impactful. What has it been like? It's all the same things that I mentioned before, right? It's hard because it's so important, but it's also so large, right? It is a 3 million person organization. That's just the Department of Defense. That doesn't even include contractors and things like that. That's amazing. And they build tanks and planes and satellites floating around in outer space. And it's just, it's not only large, but it feels like it's Byzantine to navigate and understand. And it's very difficult for me to even comprehend how, you know, an entrepreneur dreaming about what to do next would even know how to find that crack to start in, and how to make an impact. And I suppose that the easy answer to your question, Raj, is that it's just as meaningful. It's just as meaningful. It's just as hard. It's some days it's just as frustrating. But at the end of the day, you know that it matters. And I feel like a lot of the work that you do on the outside is forming a rebel alliance with the coalition of the willing. Those who share in that belief that we have to do something different and better. I say this all the time. I really hate the word innovation because I think innovation is a toothless concept if it's not actually rooted within some level of disruption. And disruption is actually the thing that has to come in and serve as the way that we change things. And so being on the outside, you have to approach disruption a little bit differently because you don't have the same tangible, I don't have the same ability to influence some of the things that you can when you're on the inside. So you have to think about disruption a little bit more strategically, but understand that there are those on the inside that you want to partner with that are going to have that same shared vision. So, you know, it's hard, but we've actually been really successful. And I think that part of it is just a pure startup entrepreneurial sort of obvious thing, which is it is about perseverance. It is about pushing and understanding that you have to find the places to test your theories. There are many things about standard startups that I don't think can apply in this space, or at least I think if you stuck to many of the common wisdom elements about a startup in this space and you were focused on it as we are in Rebellion, I think it'd be very hard to scale effectively and fast enough to be able to prove the business. So I think you have to build a company like ours differently, and we have, right? We've funded it differently. We have certain activities you would never do in a normal startup, but that's part of what makes it really interesting. Scott Brady from Innovation Endeavors and also from Stanford, you know, he has this thing talking about original mistakes and original learnings, and I think a lot of what makes this frontier, this area so cool and different is that there's so many original things here that just nobody knows how to do and scale yet. So we get to learn a lot, which I think is exciting.
So Chris, let me jump in and ask maybe something very tactical, and it's okay to say you pass on the question, but as a CEO of a startup now focusing outside in, can you give the class 3 tactical surprises that surprised you, that you thought you understood the DoD? You were inside for 5 years, you were running all this stuff, you had a bunch of friends. You know, was one of them like your phone calls never got returned anymore? Or, I mean, what was it as a CEO of a startup with $63 million in a Series A, yet I was surprised expat, it was 3 of them.
Yeah.
Or pass. Or you could say pass.
No. I'll give a few.
or wrong administration to have Eric Schmidt on your board. I mean, you know, pick something, or it's going to be great in January. I mean, whatever you want to say on the record.
Yeah, no pressure.
But there has to be a couple surprises, and I'm asking the question, Chris, not to put you on the spot, but remember it's Stanford, so half these students are going to go to startups or work with the government or try to help them. And what I'm trying to get is, you know, are there things that they should be aware of, even as a domain expert? You went out and went, oh my God, the belly of the beast looks very different from the outside than it did from the inside when I could walk into a 4-star's office. Does that make sense why I'm asking the question?
Yeah, it does. So
and Raj, stop me from embarrassing our guest. So.
No. Actually, so so here, let me walk through a couple of them. It's funny. You will actually find, so one of the things that I never had to worry about on the inside was budget. And this is going to be an interesting one. As it turns out, finding who has a budget and can actually allocate funds is a lot more complicated than you think. And actually, just because you find someone who has budget that can actually buy something or do something, they have to find a contracting office to do this. Actually, Raj, I feel like you should be an expert in this particular mess here, because it is a mess. And I will tell you a quote that we got. That's just not a priority for us. It might be for this particular group, but we don't care about it at all, so it can just wait. And what you will find is that I was telling the nicer version of that story, Steve, with the find the coalition of the willing. There are people, but if you simply believe that you're going to show up with an awesome product and awesome technology, guess what? That doesn't mean anything, which is going to lead to my second point.
That's a big number one. That's a great one, Chris.
The second one, which is showing up with an awesome product and technology. Guess what? This space has a lot of companies in it that have been here for much longer than you. And you probably don't know anybody in this space. They do. They know them all. They may have actually occupied the jobs that the current people in those roles are doing at another date and time. And so they have all those relationships. That's a moat. And they say that they also do pretty much anything that you will say that you do. They're like, AI ML, we do AI ML on quantum clusters with cheddar cheese. And you're like, I don't even know what the hell that means. And they're like, but they do post-quantum cheddar cheese development. And you're like, I don't even know what any of those things are. And literally, I have had people who send me the most random word salad construction of words and phrases and all this shit. And you're like, machine learning for toasters with blockchain, and you're like, how does it all? I don't even understand what you're saying, and I get that all the time. So even the difference is that you have to find the person, you have to find that coalition of the willing, you have to find that partner that has a belief in solving a problem, and it's probably not technology, right? They also have to know what is real and what is not. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. You will, I can't tell you the weird shit that I get sent my way, and they're like, oh, you guys should partner. And you're like, this isn't even a company. I thought that this is like the setup of the last season of Homeland, right? And you're like, it's not even real. And so you'll see things like that. And so part of, I think, what you really want to do is be clear. And this will lead to my last thing. It's actually not if you're selling this customer technology, you already lost. It is a mission-driven organization, which means you actually have to understand what they are doing. They're not, there is a person who's going to say, oh, I need more AI and ML. They're likely not the person who has the budget at the end of the day. And then the shop that's going to be doing the contracting and all that that's sitting underneath it, they only care about the mission-driven part, which has to all come down. And you're going to learn a whole new vocabulary of acronyms like you just can't even imagine. Like you're going to, I have so many acronyms that I know in my life, like, you know, JADC2, Joint All Domain Command and Control. Like you will get so good in this world of stringing together words into acronyms, and you will become very good at it. And if you're not good at it, then you're selling technology. And if you're selling technology, you're competing with the people who are like, hey, we also wear hoodies, or, you know, look at this. It's like, it looks like a suit, but it is a hoodie, right? Like you're going to compete against all that. So there's a variety of things in there that I think are really, really important. But I do think that it's important to find the coalition of the willing. And you know, I have people who reach out to me all the time and they're like, hey, I'm trying to sell into the DoD, or hey, I have a health startup and I want to sell into the VA. It's helpful to find people and remember that the networks and I'm using quotes here, the Valley, right? Normal software companies, the networks are orthogonal. So what you want to do is you want to find people, and there's actually a few of them on this call that can actually bridge those networks, because they will be able to connect you with the coalition of the willing. And that is the beginning of a mapping exercise to find the people who can actually help you. And I think without that, it's not like you're just going to go to the landing page for defense.gov and be like, oh, cool. Hey, you know who I'm going to email? The Secretary of Defense, because they're not going to return your email, right? Like, as a matter of fact, it might even bounce because their email isn't always set up perfectly, right?
This is
Like,
spoken like a battle-scarred CEO in his first year. Raj, back to you. Thank you, Chris.
Great. All right.
I'm sorry for that
That
question.
was fantastic. Hey, so I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to turn it over to the great student questions. So you spent a little time talking about what's real and what's not real. AI is all the hype. AI is being sprinkled everywhere. You know, one of the things that this class is trying to do is help understand how is technology going to change war and doctrine in the future. In your view, what is real or not real in AI that will change how nations compete on the battlefield in 20 and 30 years?
I'll tell you, nobody, and throughout this entire series, nobody you talk to is going to have a good answer, but I'm going to, because it's all a little bit of a guess, but I'm going to tell you something slightly different that I think is really important. We either show up or we cede our ability to influence and decide on that policy based off of the strength and the capabilities of what we create. Let me be a little bit more specific. If the world's greatest technologists do not show up and build the systems for the Department of Defense to lead in this area and decide the ethical and moral boundaries that we believe in and that we as a nation are comfortable with, somebody else is going to show up and lead in the capability, and they will lead in the way that those technologies are built, and they will decide how they are used. And that will be the definition of ethics and morality. That will be the definition. So you have, I believe, one very, very simple choice. And I say this to everybody: show up. If you don't show up, then you don't get to play a part in the discussion. And the most powerful thing that you can do is show up. And in that belief that nobody is going to come save us, we have to show up and do this ourselves, is such a powerful thing to me. Because if other countries who do not share your beliefs become the leaders in these in these capabilities and how they are used in a military context, and they deploy them, it doesn't matter what you think. That is now the norm. A lot of how I think about why these technologies matter aren't actually about warfare. They're about deterrence. They're about this place where nobody would actually deploy or use these capabilities in a way that we wouldn't want them to, because the outcomes would be too unpredictable, or the outcome would be crushing for them. Deterrence is an incredibly powerful thing, but we have to show up. We have to build these things. And in doing that, we get to define a lot of what it means. And I believe so much that technologists, people like you and people like me, that if we can't give that up to somebody else, I don't want somebody less capable than the best in this country to show up and build those systems. I don't want that. I don't want the person who's going to build the next post-quantum cheese grater to be defining how all of these things are going to be ethically and morally used. So I don't know that I directly answered your question, Raj, but I think it's a lot of guesses. A lot of people are going to spend time talking about robots and killer shit like that. And I think that that's all really interesting, but I think it still actually comes down to that decision point, which is who, how, and what we build. And I think that that's the most powerful part of how to think about where the future goes, is not about how we simply discuss it, but also being party to how it's created and used.
Well, if you're not saying send me in, coach, right now, you guys aren't paying attention. That was pretty inspiring, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got a lot of great questions, and Chris, just respect for your time. Let us know when we need to cut them off. But we'll start out with Holden, who's a military veteran, combat veteran, and been a real active part of our defense innovation efforts here at Stanford. But Holden, over to you.
Sure. Appreciate it, Joe. Hey, sir, first off, thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time today. So my question revolves around the government and the military's ability to recruit programmers and technologists. As you know, with the venture-backed startup, you can afford to pay these programmers coming out of Stanford, MIT, very competitive packages, but the military is hamstrung by GS pay grades and the like. How, when you were on the inside, did you struggle to recruit folks? Have you ever advocated for a different way to approach compensation packages?
So this is, the answer is no, I didn't. I did have a lot of fights around getting people recruited, and I'll go into some of that here in a second. But here, when I was on the inside, I had one simple way to look at it. Come here for 6 months, come here for 1 year. Do a thing, make an impact, put your dent into the mission, something that is tangible and real, and then go back to what you were doing. I think that that's actually okay. I think that one of the things that is important is that we have to have people on the inside, and then we have to have people on the outside. I don't think that a viable structure is that the Department of Defense is employing all of the greatest talent within it, because I think that the world of software, technology, and hardware startups and all these things they've grown too large. And if you look at the evolution of how technology has impacted military operations and led to so many incredible things over many, many decades, the big change that we have seen is essentially the creation of Silicon Valley in the ability to deploy capital to build startups where there's an actual market that products can be sold into. And I don't think that it's realistic to think that the DoD is going to be able to compete against that. Instead, I think what the DoD can do is, in its ranks and in its military, prepare, expose, and bring people into technology in a view that really what we want are that coalition of the willing that I mentioned before, in the view that we want people to actually have a sniff test that's like, well, wait a minute, what is a post-quantum cheese grater? Like, why would I want that, right? And why is that important? And I think that all those things really help. I think that that is an incredible place for the department to continue to grow. I also think that things like Defense Digital Service, the team that I started, are incredibly important because while they may not be 1,000 people, right? And it may be 100 people, they can work on problems of impact and things that matter at a scale that is still has an order of magnitude impact, right? But they don't have to be massive in order to do it. And I think that actually the creation of companies like Rebellion and bringing, in some cases, VCs into the mix that have never invested in a company just solely focused on selling to the Department of Defense is kind of a precious moment in time. So the hope is that we can continue to prove out that this not only matters and has heart, but it also can build something enduring and large and meaningful. There's still a lot to prove in this space, but it's gonna take people on both sides. Maybe just to tell you one story, there's actually a student at Stanford who joined my team at Defense Digital Service, Jack Cable, who does a lot of ethical hacking work. Boy, we fought like hell to have Jack come join our team, and ultimately kind of used every possible hiring authority to bring Jack in. And I look at that, and yes, I think that the answer that you may not have asked the question to, but I think is somewhat aligned, is how do we just make it easier for the great technologists and people who want to show up in the mission? How do we make it easier for them to come in and be a part of this? Maybe we don't pay them the same, but I don't think you have to in all cases. I think you can still get them in there, have them do really, really meaningful work, and then move back onto other things and do great work on the outside. That, I think, is a worthwhile endeavor, and I think it benefits everyone if we do that.
Thanks, Brad Jackson. You've been waiting. I think this question speaks to a lot of things that Chris was talking about.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Professor. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chris. You kind of touched on it, but my question was, how do you find that balance between being actually and effectively disruptive, but also being realistic in what you can actually get done within the parameters that you're given, especially at an institution like DoD? Do you stick to your guns and just keep pushing and fighting, or do you also, like you said, sort of pick and choose your battles strategically?
We had 3 criteria for everything that we worked on at Defense Digital Service. Criteria number 1, does it matter? Does it matter? If we're gonna do this, is it actually gonna matter? There's all kinds of stuff we could be working on, right? But remember how I convinced people to come and join in the mission. I said, come here and do something important. And when you leave here, you will leave a changed person. You will be different than the day that you showed up. If we don't work on things that actually matter, then that is a lie. So I think that you have to focus your energy on things that are deeply meaningful. There's a really great Wired article about some work that we did to hack and take down drones that were carrying grenades overseas and being dropped on our military, and how we built in a very, very short period of time something to stop those drones. That matters, right? When we were doing testing, a group of young soldiers were hit by a grenade, and one was pretty seriously injured. as we were testing our solution, and had a bunch of solutions, or had a bunch of products that were supposed to protect and keep them safe on, when they were attacked. Has to matter. So don't lose sight of that. I had a bunch of people who would come and they'd be like, hey, we have to do this congressional reporting, or we have to trim budgets. And look, I'm not saying that government is efficient with capital and all these things. I'm not even remotely making an argument for that. But I just didn't care if that was the thing. If you left and you said, hey, what did you work on? You say, hey, I saved whatever, some small amount of money that's against $1 trillion budget. I don't think anybody's that's not gonna change the world. That's not gonna change you. So criteria number 1 doesn't matter. Criteria number 2, do we have buy-in at the highest possible level? Because when shit goes down and we need help, we're gonna reach out and we're gonna ask for help. And you know what? What I have found is that you almost always are gonna end up needing to work to pull on that particular ask, that favor. You know, one of the last things that I worked on was a thing called Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure Cloud, JEDI Cloud. It was in the news at least 2 to 3 times. That was a lot of work. It was really, really hard. Yes, it mattered. And yes, it required a lot of help at all the different levels in order to make sure that we didn't get crushed and that it actually was able to move forward. Right? It's a $10 billion commercial cloud acquisition. And then the last one, the last criteria that we had was, what makes us so special? What makes us good at this, right? We're nerds, we're product managers, designers, bureaucracy hackers. Are we the right people to do this, right? It's easy to think that you're smarter than everybody and all that. Don't buy into that. That's just, there's a difference between being arrogant and being part of the solution. You could be really, really smart and you can be an amazing technologist, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't mean that I'm going to stick you on a helicopter to go out and do a raid with special operations, right? It just doesn't. So don't lose sight of that. What makes you so special? What makes us so special? And we have to keep that in mind. And that's actually very helpful because it means that some things are just not about what we could do as technologists. And we used those three criteria quite a bit to help us guide our decisions. But I'll also say this, who gives a shit about the rules? Fuck all those rules. Like, I don't, all the rules in the world are, you know, I had one, here's my rule. If it isn't against the law or if it's not against regulations, then we should be looking at it because it doesn't mean that it's right. So, you know, go break those rules because they're probably fucking stupid anyway.
Hey, Chris, this is gold. We do have to kind of read between the lines because you're not very clear in the way you want to make your point, but you kind of sugarcoat things, but no, this has been awesome. We have Nand join us, but wow, you know, the 2 words I took from this is show up, everyone. And Chris showed up big time for all of us. So I hope he's been an inspiration for everyone to show up and however they can. But Chris, thanks for joining. I hope you can stay with us, but wow, we could not have asked for a more inspirational speaker, and really appreciate you making time for us. And Raj and Stephen, anything you may have.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for all that you've done and that you are doing, and you're still rocking a hoodie.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Always awesome to get the unfiltered Chris, full fire hose.
Hey, Chris, how are you, man?
Hey, how are you? I was like, I saw that you were speaking, and I also know Nand. So I'm gonna mute and go off video, but I'm gonna be listening to his talk. I cussed a lot, so you have a lot to you have to cuss at least twice as much as me.
No, actually, what's so wonderful is you know, Chris actually this is kind of my life. Raj, you and Chris were, guest lecturers at Professor Carter's class last year when I was there at HKS. I just heard that General Shanahan actually was a guest lecturer, I guess 2 days ago. I caught up with him yesterday. And so this is almost like being at work again. So I just saw Chris actually, how long ago was it we saw each other at the Pentagon? Maybe like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, exactly. So what an amazing crew and cast. So, but I've got to say, one thing I'll say before Chris goes, on mute is the key point that he made of showing up. I've got to say, his discussion, Raj's discussion, he and I met right before his talk, was actually part of the inspiration for me to actually go and join the Pentagon myself. So, the points he made, even though they may, he made them very quickly. It's a very, very deep point of you've got to show up, you've got to be there, you've got to get involved. There's no substitute for that. You can't be on the outside in doing this stuff. So, serving and being in there is actually really, really key.
I totally agree. All right, I'm going to go on mute. Thanks all.
Thanks again, Chris. So Nand, thanks so much for joining you. We passed your bio around. I know you're just coming off a long stint as the acting director of the Jake, and General Shanahan was singing your praises in our last class. Obviously bring just a wealth of experience to the role. Stanford GSB, so welcome home, longtime Silicon Valley entrepreneur. Great to have you back here, Nand, and I really appreciate you making time for us.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I know, I don't want to run out of time. I've got like 1,000 things to talk about, so I'll jump right in. I sort of wore my best T-shirt, something I couldn't wear around the Pentagon, so I thought I'd dress properly for the occasion. Chris made some amazing points, and actually, what's great about it is I won't repeat most of them. Just sort of highlight and emphasize, a couple of things. One thing that I did want to do, just to give you a different sort of angle or sort of idea of how to attack the problem. Trailblazers like Raj and Chris and others who've been at and started up, DIU and DDS and others. The Jake itself is actually a very different organism, and how General Shanahan and I and others sort of organized the Jake and are attacking the problem is coming at this from a different angle. So in some sense, I would view, some of the trailblazing organizations like DIU and DDS as outside-in organizations. So bringing the best of that culture, Valley culture, entrepreneurship, et cetera, to the DoD. Now, the way the Jake got created itself was very different, which also has changed the way we operate and engage with the broader DoD. So we view ourselves more as a inside-out organization, which is changing the DoD from the inside. And so the game that we're playing and the strategy that we're playing is slightly different in terms of how we're having to bring change to the organization. And I'll take you through a couple of sort of ways how we're operating. Professor Blank, folks like Mark Leslie, you'll see a heavy influence, from the thinking, how we're trying to actually bring that in. And so I've got a couple of slides. I do well with whiteboards, but I really do want to see if I can pull this in here. So give me a second if I can find this. Here we go. So let me quickly talk about the Jake, and then I wanted to talk about a favorite topic of mine called software-defined warfare, which is really sort of an idea that I've been working through sort of across that. So real quickly about the Jake. We are a weird organism inside the DoD in that we've been tasked to sort of drive artificial intelligence to scale at the DoD. And the thing that, I think General Shanahan kind of tricked me into taking the job, because this is a set up to fail job right away. There's no way to get graded, no way to get a bonus, no way to ever say that your job is done. One point that we discussed that I think a question around policy and ethics and things, the Jake itself actually has an incredibly broad span of control. We're a tiny team. So we own all of AI ethics and policy for the DoD that includes 3000.09 around autonomous weapon systems. We have a product directive. We have 32 products that we're building across 6 verticals, which absolutely sounds batshit crazy. Nobody ever would design an organization to ever do that. All the way from warfighter health to joint warfighting to business process automation, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, cybersecurity, and predictive maintenance. So that's just nuts. We have an acquisition arm. Congress is probably going to give us acquisition authority this year with the NDA coming through. And then an entire missions team headed up by a one-star select from the National Guard with 606s in them, all heading up different missions. So we are a weird organization. And this has been one of both the challenges, but also the opportunities to drive secular change across the DoD. This is one of the big changes that I brought to the table here is when General Shanahan, when I came in about 1.5 years ago, we were focused on building one-off products that in some sense was what I called a pea shooter at a tank, which is we weren't going to change the trajectory in any way, shape, or form. And this is where I think a lot of the thinking around how we build businesses here in the Valley have to come into play. And this is one, if I could sort of, give one piece of advice to sort of the students and those on the call is, the core elements of building leveraged business models and scale, again, taught by professors like Professor Blank and others, is a key part of how you actually change a 3 million person organization through tech. Now, this is a long game, but the core idea is that every single thing that you do, that we do at the Jake, has to be built and done with leverage in mind. So whenever I talk to any of my product teams or my missions team, which is, by the way, organized more like an enterprise sales team now. So we actually took all the colonels and the captains and said, you are now actually going out there and finding the repeatable customer patterns. You're not finding me one-off custom projects to come build. You need to find the patterns where I can build a single piece of IP or technology and then sell it, in quotes, to all the combatant commands and services equally across, because doing one-offs is never, ever going to change the DoD. And I'll talk about architecture and other pieces in a second, but that's a very key part of the business model change that General Shanahan and I had to drive through over the past year. The other is AI is an emerging area of technology. And as we all know on this call, is that AI is not a singular technology. It is a collection of, back when I got my computer science degree back in the late 80s, we were trying to model the brain. Well, what AI has done in the meantime is basically picked up every piece of technology and statistics and regression, and basically we call it AI, but it's not a singular technology. So we're dealing anywhere from string data to numeric data to audio, language, still image things, full motion video, object recognition. So you have to take this on a technology by technology basis and focus on applying this to a particular set of customer problems that they're bringing in. And I'm hoping all of you on the call can see, I take a very practical approach to this. There are great thinkers like Professor Carter or others who've come on to talk to you. I'm an entrepreneur and an implementation guy. So my focus is on practical ways of moving this big rock, in a tactical, tangible way, slowly and surely, while big thinkers like Chris and others will sort of drive the sort of broader theoretical pieces of this and also get that energy going. Our job is basically trying to mine rock every single day, getting in the office there. So we take a very, again, practical approach to this, and then focusing on the impact, whether it be on the value impact. For instance, the way I segmented it is you can either be a vitamin or a painkiller, either a cost reducer or a revenue generator. And you look at the technology products and IP that we build is either focused on the cost, bending the cost curve side of it. We have aging equipment. We have, a number of different sort of business processes inside the DoD that really suck. How do we actually tackle those with AI, which become quick wins that then success begets success? And then the new warfighting capability that I'll talk about in a second, much, much more complicated and the stuff that Rebellion and Anduril and a number of other companies are helping us with on that front. A very different set of technologies, a very different set of problems there. We take, at the Jake, actually, we've implemented a sort of a funnel-based model. And this is the other funny part, was nobody had ever seen a funnel before. I had my missions team basically sit down, taught them how a funnel works, and how do you actually mature technology products over time? Because you are never going to pick, the chances of an internal IT or a tech organization picking the exact product with the exact technology and hitting a lightning strike, a runaway success is very low. So you have to build effectively $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion worth of pipeline before you can generate even $50 or $100 million worth of good products coming out the other end. So these disciplines have been put in place now over time, which has actually taken us a long time. But I think one of the key takeaways that at least I take from this is that you have to manage the software and technology like a business, not like IT. I think at the DoD, there seems to be this model of thinking about this as running an Exchange server or running a firewall, as opposed to doing new real product development. And you need to bring all the discipline and work that we have done in the Valley to bear to actually do this sort of next generation work here. So let me take you through one other big idea. Might take me a couple of slides and then open for questions here. So the way we're sort of at the big picture applying AI across the board here, on the left is the Pentagon with a highly connected data centers with high bandwidth. And on the right, you've got the tactical edge, right? We've got UAVs, we've got tanks, we've got other things there. We're basically focusing on two big areas here. One is on what we call the autonomy space. So think close combat, think AI for small unit maneuvers, really around things like SOCOM and what the Marines and others are going to have to do with sort of the new NDS and the new strategy piece. And then, and Chris actually used the magic word, JADC2, or ABMS, which is really the automation pieces. How do you connect all of our systems end to end? Because if you take any single process at the DoD that requires targeting, logistics, fires, everything else, it is a process that is half manual, half PowerPoint, half Excel, half whiteboard, and half a bunch of lieutenants, majors, and colonels all drawing stuff and cobbling it together. And if we all agree that the next generation of warfare is going to be fought at the speed of software, you really do need these end-to-end systems all connected together in a backplane, a platform, surprisingly. Now, the problem is that this is what our architecture looks like on the left here at the DoD. A bunch of vertically integrated Snowflake applications with a mouse and a keyboard and a screen. And for students of economics, you see the cost curve graph on the left just doesn't work. Your marginal cost and your average costs of building software do not go down over time. And what's ironic and funny is that software is one of the few businesses where the more you build, the cheaper it gets. It should. So the curve that you want is on the right. And the only way you're going to get there is through building common platform services and the application architecture that internet scale companies apply to today. And that discussion and idea is completely missing. And so we basically continue to build stuff as it is on the left. This is the exact discussion that Chris and I just had a couple of weeks ago sitting at the Pentagon, was how do we move things from left to the right there? And the second thing, and this is the last piece I'll leave, is the architecture. The architecture of our systems is a vertically scaled architecture. For every weapon system, it's about how do we get a bigger and bigger weapon system out there. Now, the problem is that a giant carrier sitting out with a hypersonic missile against it is a completely, it's exactly like a giant vertically scaled data center that we used to have 15, 20 years ago. And when you think of the architecture changes we need to make actually in our design for the next generation combat systems and things, is precisely the same things that we had to do to change the way we operated data centers, which is moving from stateful, long-running individual systems to horizontally scaled stateless systems on the right. attritable, work in denied and degraded environments, and a whole bunch of other characteristics to move ourselves from pets to cattle over there. And so this is basically what we're thinking of as sort of, what we're calling sort of software-defined warfare. And this is the last slide I'll pull up here because there's a ton more content. The other side of this, in talking about AI, is the disconnected set of our operations. So we've got things like intelligence on the left, you've got operations on the right. The modeling and simulation systems at the Pentagon, we've got 40 of them running around, all completely disconnected from either Intel or the operations side. None of this is actually connected end to end through a platform system. And this is part of the change we need to drive, because we can't get AI working at the DoD unless we actually have a platform that gives you a single compute and a data plane upon which you can actually build AI applications. So I jokingly sometimes call the Joint AI Center as the Joint Sewer and Plumbing Center. It's because most of the work that we end up doing today is laying sewers and pipes for the work that actually will and needs to get done sort of over time here. So I threw a whole bunch of stuff at everyone here, but I hope at least sparked enough thinking and conversation here to jump into Q&A.
So Nand or Joe, you want to go, or can I take a question?
Please.
And Nand, you might want to stop sharing your screen.
Yes,
so we
yes, sorry.
see everybody's wonderful face.
Lovely.
So, I just want to tell you that General Shanahan basically blamed all of Jake's success on you. So congratulations. And I really, truly was taken with the idea of MVPs, continuous deployment, and it sounded quite familiar. And so congratulations of actually putting that inside the DoD. But I want the class to notice, and I want to bounce this off of you. You were actually running two strategies, and maybe they evolved at over time. Is one is a product strategy, which is a kind of a demand pull. You could find someone with a problem, and they could say, yeah, oh boy, if you could solve that, we'll take that because we're special ops, and yeah, man, we need that now. Mm-hmm. And that seemed like Jake 1.0. But the platform strategy, and you alluded to, I want to make sure the class hears that, that's an enterprise sales strategy, and that's a push. Is that, first of all, did I characterize that correctly?
You nailed it. And part of the trick is how do you disguise the broccoli in the chocolate?
Right.
Yeah.
And let me just see if I can push it a little further. The only class of platform that I know of at that scale that's been that influential at scale across the DoD was actually an outside acquisition, Jedi, where in fact we said everybody's going to the cloud and that will be our platform. Would you characterize the common backbone as kind of that class, except it's an internal push equivalent to what we did on the cloud?
Yeah, so the way I characterize it, there's the infrastructure cloud level, which is the Jedi piece that Chris ended up sort of building out there and adopting, and Jedi is still it's taken its twists and turns and everything, but everybody is coalescing around the fact that we need a common infrastructure cloud, and that Jedi will be the sort of prescribed one. So I work for Dana Deasy, who owns Pete Ranks and team, took Chris's point and implementing it. The next layer, though, that's missing is application platform services.
And is that you? Is that AI?
That's sort of going to be driven primarily by us. It's not exactly AI per se, but AI services, when you actually think of how they're going to get consumed, naturally lend themselves to a services-oriented architecture that has to get built out on top of the infrastructure platform. The last slide that I didn't cover actually was sort of my shit list of stuff, what doesn't work at the DoD. The biggest problem there, Steve, is nobody owns running that. So while Microsoft and others can run the Jedi Cloud for us, and Amazon and others, one of the problems we have is nobody owns running application services for the DoD. And that is my biggest gripe. And the Jake can't run them because we're not an operational software organization. But we need to find and solve that.
Doesn't that mean that and I don't want to take class time, but you just exposed maybe the way to get this adopted is actually do a inside, outside, back inside again, where actually have some prime decide that, well, if we could make money at it, we not only won't fight it, we'll bid on it, and that now we'll run it, and it must be great because some prime now bid it rather than you came up with it?
Yeah, that is the hope and expectation. I mean, companies like Rebellion, companies
Yep.
like others are probably have to come in and build that for us. The side that we need to take care of, putting on my DoD employee hat, is that we need to be ready to receive it and run it. So we got to palm for it, we got to plan for it, we got to stick it onto somebody to run. That piece is something that I've been pushing incredibly hard. And I feel like we're kind of getting there in the conversation, but we're not quite there just yet.
Congratulations. So I just want the class to understand what a major transformation this backbone will be for the DoD. And it's frightening to think that, this idea, once exposed, just the idea, could easily be implemented in China as well as in here.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That is the biggest fear, actually.
Right, that not having, again, I repeat it to the class, I want to remind you again, not having legacy actually at times is an advantage when you're in a disruptive transition. Yes. And we are in that transition. So Joe, let me turn it back to you in the class, and Nan, thank you for letting me interrupt.
No, thank you, sir.
Nand, and Chris's words, thanks for showing up for all of us. You were the acting director for some time. Let's just say even in this current role, let's say you're still the acting director. What's the biggest win you're looking for, let's say, in the next year for the JAIC and for the DoD and with regards to AI?
Yeah, so the biggest win that we're focused on now is the Joint Common Foundation, the JCF. So we have a mandate to build a AI development and data environment for the DoD that basically democratizes access to compute and data for. So the grand vision here, if you sort of gave me, is a tactical team sitting out in one of our remote bases. If they can power up a Nipper laptop, crank out 30 lines of Python code, and grab a set of services, logistic services, mapping services, targeting services, et cetera, that are DoD-wide available directly through the JCF, and crank out a piece of code that they can ATO, get into production, and then use it for a month and throw it away. That would be, I would quit then, because the game, it's done. Because that's the level of game that Goldman Sachs brings to the table, right? They see an arbitrage opportunity, they throw 3 developers at it, 75 million bucks in profit later, they're done with the arbitrage, right? The arbitrage is closed. That is the reconfigurability and speed that we need to have at the DoD, so that when we are, if ever, God forbid, in combat, the reconfigurability of our infrastructure, whether it be hardware infrastructure at the tactical edge or our back-end systems to react, that is the level of game that we have to have, or we're toast. That's it. It's that simple for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Raj, over to you.
Well, look, I've got a few, but maybe we'll turn it over to some student questions now. So, and then I'll come back at the end. You're on mute, Joe.
Joe, you're on mute.
Yes, I've been doing this for 6 months now, and I'm still doing that. So, okay, and let's jump to student questions. Then, Raj, you can close this for us. But let's see. How about Myrno? You got a good one, and you're first in the queue.
Sure, thanks for being here. The funnel you put up really resonated with me. We've heard a lot of speakers talk about the challenge of scaling innovation, whether it's in the world of software or not. My question is sort of stepping in maybe outside the pure construct that Jake a bit. When you think about the pure number of organizations involved with acquisition at every stage, whether you want to call it sort of ideation, incubation, and scaling, how do you think about tying all those organizations together and coordinating them in a way to kind of hand things off in a way that that funnel can actually exist?
Oh my goodness, that's a fantastic question, and we are battling that every single day. What we're finding, and just to use JADC2 actually is a great example, right? Joint All-Domain Command and Control is one of the biggest projects going on across the DoD, and it involves literally every system you can imagine. What you find is that there are 50 by the way, when you do the phone, we do the phone calls. I have one of our colonels, Colonel Brad Boyd and Jordan Warfighting, join that. There are 450 people on the call. Now, with 450 people, you're just never ever going to get anything done. You just basically get through the agenda and you're done. That level of size and coordination, I think, is the wrong. That structure, I think, by definition, is just the wrong one. The problem is that every service, the federated feudal model of how acquisition gets done and money gets allocated. So when you go back to my snowflake application diagram, the problem is that everybody who raises their hand and says, I've got a problem, they literally get a check for 20 million bucks to go solve it. And there is no rationalization of, if we invested that money in a platform service that then actually is a tragedy of the commons problem, where that never just ever gets solved. It's because the services, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy and others have their budgets. They don't want to give up control. They don't want oversight from the joint forces. Yet we actually have to build joint force applications to actually go to war with. So that incongruity, by definition, is the thing that actually is the biggest issue that then causes the cascading problems of bad acquisitions and other things there. And, with DIU, for instance, we partner with them to help with the acquisition process. DDS, we've actually done some work with them on, figuring out customer requirements and things. But there is a much broader structural issue that's at the heart of this. And I think some of you did pre-reading Michelle Flournoy's piece, around sort of what to do for the next generation of the DoD, et cetera. The good news is there are people starting to think about this. Ellen Lord's trying to fix the acquisition process, et cetera. But the feudal nature of how stuff gets designed and built and patterned inside may have worked for building airplanes or tanks. It doesn't work for software, especially internet scale, highly, scaled software. It just doesn't work.
So you mentioned Colonel Brad Boyd. Well, we have Colonel Ed Cuevas is on the same military fellowship that Brad was on, and
oh, lovely.
He's up for the next question.
Hey, good evening, sir. Thanks for coming in and talking to us today. I have one question for you. How do you break down the digital walls between the services and the departments? Because this is something that's kind of everybody in the military knows, but then, or who's been involved with DoD knows, but, maybe a lot of the students on the call don't know, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but, the services have completely different architecture.
Yes.
Like combatant commands have their own domains.
Yes.
It's just, a problem that I'm actually experiencing here is, Army medicine and files can't be transferred to Air Force medicine and files. And then you have someone like me, an Army guy who goes to work at a Joint Command on an Air Force base. And then, there's an issue with medical. I can't get my medical records, from the Army digitally out here to Stanford to see the remote providers now that I'm not on a military base.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's embarrassing, and then it's not just limited to the Department of Defense. I just came from working at an embassy, and you have problems with DoD emails talking to State Department emails, both class and more difficult on the classified side, but also problems on the unclass side. So is that something that you guys, or that you were tackling, or is like the Jace working on that to kind of break down those digital barriers?
Yeah, so we as a organization don't own fixing that problem, but like I talked about, is it's plumbing and sewerage. So we've got to deal with it, right? Otherwise the stuff's going to start flowing out on the street. Somebody's got to handle it. Here's how we're tackling the problem. There are two sort of hypotheses and theses that we're operating under. Number one is go to the edge and work your way in. We are now finding that working with the combatant commands instead of the services and going through the combatant commands back to the services is actually yielding a lot of results. So when you look at the NDS strategy, we've picked basically two combatant commands, Indo-PACOM and EUCOM, as our core partners, that they're going to be where we're concentrating our firepower. And when you look at, engaging with USAFE or US Army Europe or Indo-PACOM directly, finding those needs and requirements and then going back to the services and actually pushing them to go deliver for the combatant commands has actually become a very, very good strategy. Why? because the combatant commands, the 4-stars there, are really, really vocal, and they get a lot of attention, especially because they're at the edge there. That's number one. The other strategy is what we're calling sort of the anchor tenant in the mall situation, where when you're sort of trying to build a mall from scratch, you can't go to the pretzel shop and the folks in the middle who are selling the toys and stuff. You got to go lock down the anchor tenants who will basically be the draw, right? Now, what we're doing there is this idea of platforms is slipping that stuff in as a coalescing function. So we have a project called Project Salus that we built, which is a logistics application that we did for Northcom. And we're now taking that same product and selling it to all the other combatant commands. One of them, for instance, with US Army Europe, we did, where we took the Salus platform and effectively replaced 8 service members who were sitting and doing scraping COVID data off of websites. And we basically automated the entire dang thing. And that platform system, now that we've slipped it in, we're going to turn that into a logistics platform for them. So part of it is disguising and using sort of a painkiller problem, and then slipping in something that you can actually build off of becomes the sort of tricky, becomes the way. And then last but not the least is marketing. We built an engine health model for SOCOM, for the Black Hawk helicopters. And General Clark over at SOCOM now, what happened about 3 weeks ago is they pulled one of the Black Hawks because we predicted an engine failure. And they pulled one, they opened up the engine, and lo and behold, it was a true positive on that. And that was one of the first indicators that we got off of an AI product that we had built for them early on that actually hopefully saved somebody's life. Now that story is getting out there, and now we're inundated by people wanting to do engine health models for us now. And it's one of these things where there's no single event. One of my common phrases and favorite phrases is, it's a process, not an event. It's going to take years and years and years to do this. But the question is how do you build critical mass so that you can build leverage and scale outside of the 100 or so people that we have at the Jake? It's just, you've got to like rinse and repeat and create sort of virality to this that'll take its own shape.
Well, great. We're getting a little close on time, but let's get a couple more in. John Myrna, I have you up next.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. My
John.
question kind of melds some of the things that Chris said and some of the things that you talked about. So Chris had said, what you need to do as an aspiring technologist is sell capabilities and not technology. So my question is, from the technologist perspective, it can be hard to know where the critical capability gaps are within the DoD. So from somebody sitting on the inside looking out, what can the DoD do to help increase that visibility within the department while remaining sensitive to security concerns? And then kind of from the flip side, from the outside looking in, what can people that want to work on DoD problems do to kind of increase their education, their awareness, and their engagement with the department to better understand the mission at large?
Wow. So the first, this might sound really trite, but I'll say it anyways, is, it's all about listening to the customer. Listen to the customer. It's again, classic Professor Blank, Mark Leslie, get out there and get involved, listen, and see enough of a pattern, again, pattern creation. People just didn't understand that when I first got there. This idea of, taking our kernels. So it looks like you're with, I think, Stanford Medicine, or are you with the, oh no, okay. Or,
Just have a nice background.
Oh, okay, good. So, for instance, Hassan Tate, he's a practicing cardiac surgeon. He's our head of our warfighter health problem. And he came to us with this, and actually DIU did this actually for us, along with Google. We just actually installed one of our first microscopes that actually has an AI algorithm that will actually detect 8 kinds of diseases using a tissue sample, for instance. So we actually just did the first deployment. The point there is that when he came to me and he said, hey, we're going to buy 30 microscopes with this thing in it, the first question I asked him is, where's the scale? How do you actually drive change? 30 microscopes is not going to drive change. So what we did is we did the 30 microscopes to get at least 30 doctors using this as in an operating room. So when they have somebody open, take a tissue sample, they can immediately diagnose whether they need to operate instead of sewing them back up and then bringing them back in for another operation, which increases the fatality rates, et cetera. But the great point was, what if we actually turn that AI into a service, a cloud service, so that anybody writing a piece of software can gain access to this AI algorithm off of that? And that's, again, moving it from how do you build a piece of technology to how do you build something that has widespread applicability and scale as a platform to go do that. The second piece that I'd say, and I'd echo Chris's point, is sitting from the outside, I've got to tell you, you have no idea what you're getting into. It's taken me a year. It took me a year to get my clearance, by the way. And I actually didn't think after, going to Burning Man probably 45 different countries, when they sat down with me and went through my passport, literally stamp by stamp to make sure I had listed every single country. I don't know how many pages I had filled. I didn't think I was going to get it. It's a process, and you've just got to get in there, and you're going to write off 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your life to public service to really become a DoD insider to go drive that change. That you won't know until you get there. But do it. You'll love it.
I think Raj is going to ask our closer, and over to you.
Thanks, Nand. Thanks again for all your thoughts and encouragement. Nand, so one of the goals of this course and the student projects at the end will be to look into the future of what war may be, what conflict might look like based on these advanced technologies, and what are the steps we can do today to best prepare the DoD. Nand, from what you've seen, what is maybe the biggest positive trend that you could identify and that you would like to see extrapolated over, right? What are the things you're seeing today that you would encourage the students here to build on?
Oh, wow. I think I'll echo back to, the thoughts that I sort of gave during my talk there was, while I am unhappy with the state of software at the DoD, I am very, very excited by the direction it's going in. So for instance, DevOps, there are tons and tons of projects going on, Cloud One, Platform One, Kessel Run, obviously DDS, et cetera, DIU, all the different fires that have been lit have not been extinguished. They're growing. But like I say, DevOps and other patterns of adoption of code and the awareness around software, and also trends like, Chris, building Rebellion and the new crop of companies that are engaging with the DoD. This is all very good. But DevOps and new pieces of technology, et cetera, is what I call build software faster. The problem is that needs to be paired up with build software better. And so when you tie in architecture with speed, you're going to get the right outcomes. Currently, I think we're starting to generate speed. I don't feel, as a technologist and a computer scientist, you have to pair it up with the right architecture. And I don't think enough people know what good architecture looks like. And I would say that the positives are that if these trends in accelerating adoption of software goes well, it can get paired up with these sort of pieces around buying it better, building it better, and other things there that then collide, and you then end up getting the change that you're looking for. So
that's great. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah, I think we're running up on our time. We'd love to have you more, but just again, like Chris, thanks for showing up. Thanks for your leadership and all you're doing for all of us. And hopefully we'll see you when you come back home to the Valley after your time in the hot seat there. But anything from you, Chris or Raj, before we let our students get on? I'm Roger, Steve. I'm sorry, I said.
I think it was great. I think having General Shanahan and Nand just kind of double team this idea of what the Jake has built and more importantly, what they've learned in building it. And I think and how students can get engaged in being part of the fight rather than sitting back and thinking it's someone else's problem. And I think you've heard that about 3 or 4 times now. And all of you taking this class ought to be thinking about, how can I be Nand? Or how can I be Raj? Or how could I be even Joe Felter? Someday you could aspire to that. So thanks, Nand. That's all I have.
And then no good deeds go unpunished. We hope you can come back and join us in future classes.
I'd be honored. Thank you.
Top of the short list. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great being back at the school. All right, cheers. And Chris, see you in DC.
See you, Nand.
See you, buddy. Bye.
All right, folks, we're a minute over, which is not unusual for us, but two powerful speakers on the topic, on the heels of, I thought, one of the best speakers we've ever had, but these folks were awesome. So I hope you learned a lot. I think we're going to send down the transcript, as we did earlier. I hope you got it from Eric, but those are pearls of insights from Jack Shanahan. I think we got some more today, so we'll probably be sending out a transcript. And maybe, Eric, this is something we can continue to do as far as give students some lead time to come up with their big takeaways versus on game day. But yeah, so Raj, this filled up the class, so we're not going to have any instruction here. We can give you a quick preview next week. I did not give anyone a chance to introduce themselves early, so sorry about anyone who joined and didn't get a chance to acknowledge themselves. But yeah, we're going to shift into autonomy next week. And again, I know you've got the assignment. Please give us your questions as you start working on that, so we can steer you in there. But as Steve said, we want you to be a little bit uncomfortable, but make that a positive. Here's your chance to just go big. One thing I would like to clarify, and with Steve and Roger's concurrence, if we said 4 pages, so we don't have to mess with fonts and sizes. That's like 500 words a page. If it's so why don't we say 2,000 words or less? If that makes it easier for everyone to anticipate the expectations here.
And I know there were some questions around policy paper templates and structuring, and so we've got a couple of links on best practices around that. So if we haven't sent that out yet, we will.
But I think Steve, Roger, I will stay on. I know we're sensitive to holding you hostage, but we can stay on and have a discussion as long as you guys want to talk, or if you have questions about the upcoming assignments or anything else. So, but if you have something burning, we are into overtime.
All right, we'll see you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Safi, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Great class, Joe and Raj. And teaching team, great.
Especially where our speakers did all the work.
Yeah, well,
it's fabulous, man.
I've never had a class where it works this way, so I'm feeling guilty the whole class. It's like Joe and you have this wired. I spent the last 10 years actually teaching classes, not attending them.
I sent Steve after like the 10th or 11th nod to the impact he's made with his lean methodology. Like, Steve, I hope you feel good about showing up, because man, it's the long reach of Steve Blank. But hey, so what's the topic? Maybe is anyone getting any? Maybe Myrtle, you can talk, but or Raj, but the midterm, anything we want to put out before people start writing, and it's too late to pull back. Okay, I think that's just one thing we said. I am talking to the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, one of his 2 stars tomorrow, and Myrtle, I guess we'll all be talking about how this final project is going to look. But I'm looking for, as a vice chief, as maybe a really nice customer, if you will, entry point, along with the Indo-PACOM and UCOM combatant commanders and J5s, which we've already touched base, and they're on board. So realize time's ticking, but Myrtle, I'll probably get back with you soon with some input there, and then maybe we can lock in the folks that are going to mentor the student teams and also take the briefs. And if you haven't figured out, like with them briefing congressmen, it also might be nice to have a combatant commander take a couple of top briefs too, for a whole lot of reasons. But any feedback so far? Anything burning from the TA's perspective or teaching team?
Yeah, Joe, I just uploaded a, oh, I'm sorry, Myrna, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as long as we're not getting a flood of confused questions about the midterm.
Yeah, you know, the stakes are low. I mean, we're going to welcome a lot of different approaches. They know they got the length and the broad question, but yeah, we'll try to collectively steer them in. And I know we all of us are a little bit. It's some broadly defined lanes, but I thought you did a great job, Raj, and everyone who helped put this.
Really impressive, by the way. Really impressive. And for all of you.
One thing, Andrew, how are we doing on readings for next week?
I will actually ask Eric on that. So I think he's on tap for pulling those together. How are we doing, Eric?
Yes, I'll send the.
Eric, who are you going to ask?
Yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, right. I'm working on those right now on the automation.
Okay.
And
again, this is going to be a resource beyond the class, so we can even add things. And you can't have too many suggested readings. So let's just make sure this is a resource. This is a topic that we're kind of planting our flag in. Let's own the reading material as far as what we recommend people get smart on.
I'll do that. This is not a space that I know. It was just kind of part of the assignments. Are there key terms you all think I should look into, like joint all domain command and control or other things?
Yeah, I wonder if maybe you can even push out to the folks we know, the Jake. What would be nice to get some feedback from people who are really professionals on what the leading resources are.
So JADC2 is all the rage. It's probably the highest priority for the vice chairman right now. The Congressional Research Service just last week put out a great 2-pager on what is JADC2. I can send it to you, or you can just Google it, but I think that would be a great overview. And it really is, if you think about software, AI, analytics, that is the focal point for the department right now.
And,
So,
you know, I'll take, guilty as charged as far as the timing, but some people actually do want to prepare ahead of time. So it doesn't have to be all finished before you post. If that 2-pager Roger described, that can go on, soonest, and then we can build it from there.
So who owns the canvas? Who owns posting to the canvas?
I do that mostly.
Who's that?
It's Andrew.
I'm sorry. Oh, hi, Andrew. So can we create a folder on Canvas that has Congressional Research Service stuff? And Raj just mentioned one, and I'll pull out 3 or 4 on space, autonomy, AI, etc. that should just be there for the students. Is that okay?
Sure. Making it right now.
And then Andrew, I know
Congressional research.
I know, yeah, I'll pull them up and send them to you. And then there should be a subfolder of all the other CRS ones that we use to brief Congress. And I will link to that to you as well. Okay, so let's just create a CRS folder on the 5 or 6 technology topics so we don't overwhelm them, but they should at least know what Congress is reading. Raj, wasn't that your point?
Yeah, and I just, again, if we want to help focus in the students on particular areas or topic areas that we know are most relevant, that's, that'd be
so that's at minimum, here's what we're telling the legislation about these areas. The second one, just FYI, whoever posted Shanahan's transcript, there's a latest one inside the video section on our Google folder. So there's a cleaned up version there. And then the third thing, Joe and Raj, I'll send you, I just interviewed the head of Army Doctrine Command and got got an earful, some of it intelligible. And for doctrine, as we're prepping for maybe the final, class, I think some of the reading, I'm just jumping ahead, ADP-1.01, which is Army Doctrine, it's written in like high school English, so it takes a complicated subject and makes it uncomplicated. In conjunction with his interview and transcript might be useful.
Great.
But I'll send it to you guys first so you could decide whether it's too much or we need to edit it down. Make sense?
Thanks, Steve. And on that note, we've got some killer interviews in the hopper. Michelle Flournoy and Ellen Lord really were great, both of them. And I think they're up on the shared drive, and we can decide. I was initially, I teach another class of 200 students but this is gonna, between us, we'll make this, let's show it to our students first, and then
Joe, Michelle's was in something called the VTT format that I can't open. Can anybody else?
I'm sorry, I should have tried. I didn't realize it was wrong.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
And then the other thing is, I'll just throw this out. I don't know if it's worth anybody's time, but if you take the time of actually scraping the transcript, or if you don't have the transcript, you could just send the video to or audio to an online service, and for $5 you get a transcript. I think it makes it more accessible for the students to kind of read. And so the ones we think are critical might actually, and I'm happy to do them, but we should think about that as a resource, Joe, going forward, because if we do this in multiple classes, having an attached transcript will make these, instead of people going through 45 minutes or whatever, they go, does that make sense?
Yeah, and I love what you did with Shanahan. So Andrew, I know you're the intro, but just put that on the to-do list, and then we'll make it.
And I'm happy to do them once you guys kind of flag that these are really important. And the last thing, Joe, is I'm going to take your version of class 4 and put it up tomorrow with just minimal editing and stick it up there.
Okay.
All right. So
I could add a slide like a national military strategy. If you want me to add any more, I didn't know how much you wanted to go in there.
Yeah, if you got something else tonight, just throw it to me.
Okay, I will. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I have the latest link from you or the latest version, and I'll add to that.
Yeah, it was your version. You said I'll send it back to you.
I'm just going to add the national military strategy because it kind of flows down from.
Well, actually, that's what I was editing. That was the only part of yours I changed. So
you didn't
I'll send it back. No, I'll send it back to you tonight, and you take a quick look. Sorry, guys, for doing details.
One last thing, Nikita, are you listening? I see you're
Yeah, I'm here.
one due out. You as our external guy. Let's try to get the slides from Nand, and let's. Steve had a good save. One of them was Mark FOUO, which actually even in academia that's even something we're not supposed to have. So could you reach out to them and try to get the slides and ask them if they could just don't tell them to take it off. Just tell them, could you send us a version without that's not FOUO, and leave it up to them to decide if that just means taking it off or not.
Yeah, totally. What does FOU stand for?
For official use only. It's just this weird thing that just makes it hard to send over to people.
Well, it makes it hard to put a video up that has that slide on it that's publicly shared.
Yeah.
People get squirrely in the DoD.
And this is on me, but going forward, we do want to kind of have a battle rhythm of sending people reminders, making sure they have the Zoom channels. Again, this is on me for not making it clear to you. And then I'll absolutely try to get the thank you links out now, but I might also turn that over to you just to finish on the last couple.
We ran through this in Hacking for Defense. When our students get this kind of material from government folks, we make them return it, ASAP. It just, Stanford, we just don't want to get in the middle of some security officer going off the rails.
And lastly, I could just talk to Raj and see about this, but stick around if you want. But for next week's, Raj, did we get confirmation from the ordering? You had your guy from Joby. I've got one speaker lined up that could do either day. I just need to tell him which day.
Let me reach out. I'll text I'll text the guy.
Okay. I have one guy lined up. I wasn't able to get through to Singer, but I'll keep working.
Yeah, look, I think I don't know if we want to keep talking about it now, but yeah, we'll see if we can get the Joby CEO. He'd be interesting, and then I think Darby, right, has probably.
Yeah, I think he's the military application. Okay, we'll work that, and but everyone else, thanks for all you're doing. This is exciting. It's rapidly changing. It's an MVP, but it's. I don't
know. I think it's a pretty damn good class, guys.
It's gone great. I just when people look behind the curtain, we're making the sauces here, and we really appreciate all you're doing to help make it a pretty tasty.
I think what we did is hang Raj and Joe by the ankles and shook out their Rolodex, and realized that holy cow, when Raj and Joe call, you get anybody from the DoD. Incredibly impressive. And the nice part is our students don't have a clue how incredibly impressive that is. It's, oh yes, yet again, another class of Stanford.
And Steve, thanks to you, about 100 gazillion people outside of Stanford get to see the same thing on your very well-read blog. So thank you.
Listen, this is why it takes a village for everybody on this call. We couldn't have done it without the TAs. We couldn't have done it without you and Raj, and we'll just make it look, it is larger than life, and we'll make sure people know it. That's, and we're going to be, borrowing everything Safi has to offer as well, right, Safi? Let's see if he's
Absolutely, Steve.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Safi.
Yeah. So Yeah, I think we're going to make the country better and wiser. I think there's going to be students coming out of this class that hopefully will change some trajectories. We do that for Hacking for Defense, and hopefully we'll do that here. It's not just a class. It's hopefully when we teach this multiple times in multiple places, then we'll get the best and the brightest engaged in the way Chris and Nand have been engaged. And over time, that aggregate will actually change the quality and direction of the country. We'll be able to do that in time. So I'm going to sign off. Thanks,
All
Joe
right.
and Raj. And
Thanks everyone for showing up.
Joe, you've got everything with Darby.
Yeah, I'll handle Darby. And actually, could Steve and Raj just stay on? Oh, Raj, just give me 1 minute with you or 30 seconds with you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Oh.
Thanks, Phil.
Hey, Raj, I don't want to talk about something sensitive, but this is crazy at Stanford right now. They're actually reviewing people's syllabuses to make sure they're in line with whatever, for lack of a better word, racial sensitivities and whatnot. So Maynard Holiday is solid. He's a home run, but it is what it is. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. He's fantastic, full stop. But anyways, anyone should think I was ignoring on maybe trying to get somebody who's maybe more recognizable that we probably
got it. You need Maynard on here.
He's good. He's good. Full stop.
Yeah, got it. You need Maynard. Okay, Roger that.
Okay.
Understand the, and I also know, when we think about diversity, though my skin complexion is actually darker than Maynard's.
You're a Georgia boy.
It doesn't count. It's not actually the color of your skin because I'm darker.
I forget that. Well, it's such a crazy topic now. I don't want to say anything stupid. So, but I just between you and Steve, that was and I think if we could make sure that if we can get any more women, I'm just trying to think who we could pull in, but we've got. I mean, let's put Michelle's.
Yeah, I gotta go. Okay.
Okay, take care, man.
Thanks, man. See you.
All right. All good.